Tonight, Presidency sets up Commission of Inquiry into Ayawaso by-election violence after days of intense pressure. It has former no-nonsense Shraj boss Emil Short as its chairperson. We have details. And also later, we tell you why the Speaker of Parliament has referred a number of NDC minority members to the Privileges Committee following their protests in relation to the same Ayawaso by-election violence.
I wasn't actually shouting in his direction. I was telling everybody who could see that I am ready to pay the ultimate price for fairness and for objectivity.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond. Your success, our passion is also brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready. Also brought to you by Nationwide Medical Health Insurance, your healthcare family. Well, after days of intense pressure from civil society, the clergy, both nationally and internationally, well, the presidency is bowing to that pressure and has given in. Tonight, there's a statement out announcing the setting up of a presidential commission of inquiry into the Ayawaso by-election violence that we saw last week, Thursday. And the statement that had been released details the members of this commission and its terms of reference. I want to quickly go through it with you. My colleague, Malik Dabu, is with me here as we break down what it says, but also who these individuals are who form this particular commission. And this decision, in fact, was taken by Vice President Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia with consent of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And the reason this happened is that the president is currently out of the jurisdiction, and so the vice president is acting president, and so took that decision with consent of the president. And he has then set up a commission of inquiry into the events of the Ayawaso by-election that happened last week. The composition of the commission is Justice Emil Short, chairperson. We'll tell you who they are very shortly. Mrs. Herita Mensah Bongsu is a member. Mr. Patrick K. Champon is a member. Ernest Kofi Abuchi is a former dean of the Faculty of Law at GIMPA and a private legal practitioner, has been appointed as secretary to the commission. The terms of reference are fourfold. One, to make a full, faithful, and impartial inquiry into the circumstances of and establish the facts leading to the events and associated violence during the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election on the 31st day of January 2019. Second, to identify any person responsible for or who has been involved in the events, associated violence, and injuries. Three, to inquire into any matter which the Commission considers incidental or reasonably related to the causes of the events and the associated violence and injuries. And four, to submit within 1 month its report to the President giving reasons for its findings and recommendations, including appropriate sanctions, even in that's in essence what the statement signed by Eugene Ahing, Director of Communications, says. So quickly, who are these individuals? Let's start with Justice Emil Short. What do you know about him?
Yeah, so we know that Justice Emil Short has been, I think, one of the longest serving commissioners of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. He's one of the foremost anti-corruption campaigners in this country. He's a loud voice on this subject, and I think he's a household name in the Department of the Fight Against Corruption. And you have to remember that he's been so long at Shraj, to the extent that it's almost as if his name is synonymous with the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. Save when he left and Anna Bosman came in, and he came back. He took his position until he went on retirement some time back. So that's what his pedigree has been. He's been a judge before he was appointed commissioner of Shraj. That's his pedigree.
The thing about Justice Emil Short that will ask the credibility and weight of this, he's shown in the past through his work that he fiercely guards his independence. Once he's appointed, you cannot influence his work. And if you, the appointee, the person who appoints him, is found in the wrong, he will deal with you fair and square according to law. He's shown this under Kufuor. He investigated a certain president in the Hotel Kufuor Bata. and issued a report which was very strong on its findings. We also know he investigated one of Kufuor's appointees, one of the darling boys, people say, of former President Kufuor, the former Richard Anani, former roads minister, former health minister, and made adverse findings against him. This dragged for a while because Anani fought him for so long.
In fact, that investigation was actually concluded under Anna Bosman, his deputy.
Yes.
One of his deputies at the time.
Yes. And of course, the two of them, arguably, as far as church history is concerned, have been outstanding in terms of the ability to stand up to the system, political powers, and do their job without fear or favor.
Remember the Maybe and Johnson matter. When the Maybe and Johnson matter came, this is a British company which was convicted of bribing politicians in Ghana for business by a UK court. And at that time, there were some people who had been alleged to have received bribes from this company, who were then in government at the time that the court reached this verdict. And Chiraj investigated one of them. You have to remember that Baba Kamara actually went to court, arguing forcefully that Chiraj could not investigate him, that it lacked mandate to investigate him because he was a private citizen, and that Chiraj's mandate was limited to investigating public office holders.
Yeah.
Of course, we know that the court disagreed with him and held against him that Chiraj indeed had a mandate to investigate him. That also happened under Justice Emil Short.
So that is who Emil Short is. No nonsense, fiercely guards his independence, and they'll be sworn in shortly. But Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu, so Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu, so another stalwart as far as legal jurisprudence is concerned.
Absolutely, and there's no question about that. You have to remember that she's also one of the strong members of the National Reconciliation Commission at the time, which was set up by the Kufuor government to deal with excesses of previous undemocratic regimes. And she was a loud voice on that commission as well. And when we were doing the breaking news earlier, you talked about her work even outside the jurisdiction of Ghana. She was Ghana's nominee to the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So she's been a very, very strong advocate for the rule of law and justice and all of that. So it is the reason why her nomination as a member of this commission is noteworthy.
Yeah, and that is so important. He just the range of things she has done in her career. I remember she was also tipped to be one of the people being considered for the
Electoral Commission job.
But also I think her name also came up when in the special prosecutor's role as well. Until we had that. But if you look at her Mensah has served as a member a number of high-level national and international assignments. She served on the legal committee of the Ghana National Commission of Children, but also represented Ghana on the Intergovernmental Meeting of Experts on the Draft African Charter on Rights of the Child. So in terms of human rights, and that's the thing that she has in common with Emil Short, they have that in common. They're fiercely I guess, committed to promoting human rights and fighting for it once the law allows.
Strong advocates.
Patrick Achampong is another very interesting name.
Yeah, and I was talking about the fact that when he was IGP, Inspector General of Police, that was a time when one of the biggest stories broke in this town. And I'm talking about the disappearance of 76 parcels of cocaine. And at the time he was IGP, the government had to, under similar circumstances as this, because there were loud shouts about this must be dealt with, a commission of inquiry again was set up at the time. It did its work, submitted a report to the government. Some actions were taken against some people, some policemen actually who worked under him, and we know all of them. So I think he served until 2009 when he left the police service as Inspector General of Police.
Yeah.
So he's also a very notable
something
figure.
very fascinating about him. He's also a barrister. I mean,
of course,
he understands. It's not only coming to this from a purely police point of view, but it coming to it also legal sense. But we also know that his international reputation is unparalleled. He was a deputy contingent commander of the United Nations peacekeeping operations in Bosnia and Herzegovina back then. But also, most importantly, do you remember a name Charles Kwanzaa? The individual accused of being a serial murder and
those women.
Exactly. When he returned from his international operations, it was under his watch that Kwanzaa was arrested. And also in August 2002, he then became the Deputy Inspector General of Police, and then subsequently rose to become, the IGP himself. And so his track record in this unparalleled. And as Kofi Abochi, we know him because he's been
Harvard-trained lawyer,
Harvard-trained lawyer, former dean, etc. And he's a secretary to
KNUST. And the reason why all of this is important, and you were talking about the vice president being the one who set this up with the consent of the president. The consent of the president is essential and critical because this would have been set up under Article 278 of the Constitution. And 278(1) says that the president shall have the power and authority to appoint a commission of inquiry into any matter of national interest.
And that is important. That's why we've just been drawn a line. I'm grateful to say by the president of the Ghana Bar Association, Mr. Tony Forsing. Hello, Mr. Forsing. Thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you, Ivan.
I called you because the Ghana Bar Association, of which you're the president, issued a statement a couple of days back on this matter, and you called for firm actions to be taken to get to the bottom of this. What's your reaction then to the president's decision to set up this commission of inquiry?
Well, we received the news with great elation that at least the president has agreed with all the pressure groups that this is a matter that needs to be investigated, and if persons are found guilty, accordingly punished. In fact, even though there is excitement about the prompt action of the president, everybody still is smarting from the pain that having, sustained our democracy up to this point, we should take over and see such an incident. Even though it is an incident that happened outside the polling station, it ought not to have happened in the first place. So we all still must feel the pain of those who were hurt and the pain of this blight on our democratic credentials across the world, because these pictures have been shown all over the world, and you know how these things are slanted. Everybody is looking for an opportunity to say that, Ghana, after all, is not the beacon of hope and the shining light of Africa that we all have been touting. So there's still that pain that we all have to strive to get over. But I believe that looking at the composition of the commission, I think it's more than good enough. These are persons with proven track records. So yes, it comes with some joy, and I believe that Occupy Ghana in their letter, is it today or yesterday, to the Minister of National Security, have set the framework, which the questions that they ask and threaten that if not answered, they'll go to court, should form a beautiful framework for the Commission to start working quickly. And I believe that they should be able to get answers within the shortest possible time.
And so, for us lay people, when we say a commission of inquiry, what animal is that?
Oh well, it takes its powers from the Constitution, and it basically has the powers of a high court, and has the powers to compel persons to appear to testify, and by the constitutional provisions, unless it is against public safety, public morality, etc., their proceedings will be held in public. So it's a good sign that at least the government has listened and acted. It is now the turn of the Commission and civil society generally to provide the evidence which will make sure that this thing does not happen again. And I believe that both sides of the political divide are very unhappy about the turn of events, and will all set up to prevent, as somebody is predicting doom in the 2020 elections, that come that time would have all settled this issue such that peace would reign.
And I noticed in your statement, you demanded that the security apparatus, I think it said the IGP should take the bull by the horn and do what is needful and get to the bottom of it. I'm just curious, now that we have a commission of inquiry, and we know just yesterday the IGP issued a statement saying they've expanded the scope of its own investigations. Should both investigations go ahead with the commission of inquiry and the IGP's own inquiry, the police's inquiry, go ahead together, or you think that one should step down for the other to work? What's your own thinking on this?
I believe that the intendment of government is to get to the bottom of all this. Therefore, any act which shall help in the resolution, why not? I believe that since they have the investigative powers, they could also go ahead with their investigations and furnish the commission with their findings to help unravel whatever it is. Definitely the police will have inside knowledge as to who the men were, because they were with them. So I believe that both investigations should go side by side.
I'm grateful that you joined us. That is the president of the Ghana Bar Association speaking to us about the Commission of Inquiry just set up by the president, acting president, with consent from the president, who is out of the jurisdiction currently. Also joining us right now is John Ndebugri, a former MP for Zibela, private legal practitioner as well. Mr. Ndebugri, I'm grateful that you joined us here on Top Story. Let me ask you first, the composition of this Commission of Inquiry. Justice Emil Short, Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, Patrick A. Champon, and Kofi Abochi. Does this satisfy, I guess, those who were demanding a credible probe into this matter? If you look at the individuals, are you happy with it?
No, but I'm not one of the people who spoke about the formation of the commission. So I don't know why you are asking whether I'm happy with the composition.
Generally, what do you make of the caliber of people constituting this commission?
Well, I know all of them, and I think that they are very serious personalities. And if they are given the free hand, and they ought to be given the free hand, I believe that they will do a good job.
Okay, and let's talk about the commission and what it can and cannot do under the Constitution.
I mean, I think that the President has set up the commission under Article 278 of the Constitution. And as my President was saying a few moments ago, I mean, the President of the Bar Association, the commission has the powers of the High Court in terms of summoning witnesses and demanding documents and such other things. At the end of their inquiry, they will submit a report, and then what the President does with the report is also provided for in the Constitution.
And I guess that is the most important bit of this. What can the President do with the report? Can it be a basis for prosecution?
No, if he came under Article 278, where there are adverse findings against an individual as a result of the work of the Commission, those findings will constitute or will be equivalent to the judgment of the High Court. And therefore, anybody who is adversely affected by such a report or recommendations can appeal to the Court of Appeal against those recommendations or facts disclosed in the report.
In terms of enforcement, though, does the Commission of Inquiry's recommendations, can it be enforced without recourse to a court?
What I'm saying is that if, for example, individual A is found to have misconducted himself or herself, connected with the terms of reference of the Commission, and the Commission so reports, then and makes recommendations about that individual, then the recommendations or the findings are equivalent to a decision of the High Court, a judgment of the High Court. So there have been instances where people have gone to commissions of inquiry, and subsequently an attempt has been made to hold them before court on the basis of the report of the Commission of Inquiry, and they have been thrown out of court because when you appear before the Commission, you are actually a witness. You are not stricto sensu an accused person. You are a witness. But if in the course of the investigation is found out that you did something untoward, and that act you committed is reported in the report of the commission, then the adverse finding against you constitutes or is equivalent to the judgment or a judgment of the High Court. And therefore, if you go with that person to the court to prosecute him or her, you have a number of hurdles to surmount. One, that the person did not appear in the commission as an accused person or a suspect. He or she appeared as a witness. Secondly, that by reason of the fact that the Constitution has declared that adverse findings against a person found to have committed an act in the course of the work of the Commission of Inquiry constitutes a judgment of the High Court, it will amount to double jeopardy for you to present such a person in court again for the purposes of prosecuting him or her. So the president takes the report and may decide to act on it. In fact, he is enjoined to act on it. He is to issue a white paper, I think within 6 months. And if he doesn't want to issue a white paper, he must issue a statement explaining why a white paper will not be issued, and then give the persons who have been adversely reported upon 3 months in which to mount an appeal to the Court of Appeal to examine and possibly reverse the findings against him or her.
And what you just said just begs the question, and just as a lay point, I'm just thinking back to the commissions of inquiries we've had. Ghana 50 Commission, for example, the World Cup Commission of Inquiry, for example. And I wonder whether, and what happened to the recommendations and the white paper in terms of following through to apply sanctions and punish people as the commissions have recommended. We haven't seen that link between commissions and actual punishments and imposition of sanctions. And I'm wondering whether in this particular matter, this Commission of Inquiry is the appropriate forum to deal decisively with what we saw last week in Ayawaso.
I don't think so. I think that this business of Commission of Inquiry has taken me really by surprise, because, I mean, those who committed the acts are known. They should be apprehended. They should be taken through the due process of investigation and charged before a court of competent jurisdiction and prosecuted. So I don't see the point in the Commission of Inquiry. In fact, it is a way of virtually sweeping matters under the carpet. Because, as you have rightly said, past experience shows that after the report has been submitted, really, we are not likely to have any serious effects. The people are known. Some persons have come publicly and said that they are the ones who deployed them. So those persons must be made to produce those persons they deployed. And we have various footages. They can be identified, and they should be dealt with in the normal course of business. I don't see how a Commission of Inquiry fits into this matter. What they did was simple criminal acts. They committed simple criminal acts, and they have been they can easily be identified. So I don't see the need of a Commission of Inquiry. With the greatest respect, that is my humble view.
The IGP yesterday issued a statement, in fact, saying that they're expanding the criminal investigations into this matter, and told us for the first time who is part of that probe in terms of the committee. And I asked that same question of your president just before you came on. Which of these two bodies would you give precedence in terms of looking into this matter? The IGP's criminal probe or this one?
I will give precedence to the IGP's probe. I don't want to call the IGP's a decision or what he intends to do a probe. A probe? No, an investigation, straightforward investigation. People have committed crime. So they should be apprehended, granted bail, investigations will go through, and they will be charged and prosecuted. That is the end of it. The President of the Republic has established a commission of inquiry. The IGP, an appointee of the President of the Republic, is also carrying out some investigation. What is the meaning of that? I think that with the greatest respect, this question of commission of inquiry, in my very humble view, is a non-starter. It is not going to lead to anything. Not just because previous commissions of inquiry have turned up nothing serious, but because in this particular case, it is a very simple matter of criminal acts committed by individuals who can easily be identified. And in fact, who should be identified by persons, public officers, who have come out and said that they deployed them. And so, what is the commission of inquiry supposed to do? To determine, I was just called. I just returned from court and I was called. I have not seen the terms of reference. I don't know whether they are to determine whether the acts they committed were officially sanctioned or they were acts of their own. What we lawyers say, they were on a frivolous or on a what? They were.
And from what the terms of reference, it actually includes that. It's a very broad terms of reference that they've been giving. John Ndebugri, I'm grateful that you joined us, private legal practitioner with a view on it's explaining to us the legal implications of what the Commission of Inquiry is. You remember that the National Democratic Congress and their minority in Parliament, they've been waging a campaign to demand accountability and get state agencies to get to the bottom of this. They demanded the president to step in. The president has stepped in. We can now speak to the minority spokesperson on defense and interior, James Agaga, who's on the line with us. Mr. Agaga, your reaction to the setting up of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry?
Well, Evans, thank you very much and good evening to your listeners. First of all, the establishment by the President of the Commission of Inquiry to look into the acts of violence and intimidation that characterized the election at Ayawaso West Wuagon, for me, is a sign that the President is reeling under the pressure that has been brought to bear on him by the minority group in Parliament, the NDC political party, and well-meaning Ghanaians. Why was it necessary for us to call for an independent probe in the first instance? First of all, Evans, we came to the realization that the police, acting by themselves, would not have the courage to unravel the mysteries surrounding the acts of hooliganism and criminality that occurred at Ayawaso West Wuagon. Why? Because you have people who are at the center of the attacks still in office. And I will be very blunt here. I'm talking about the Minister of State at the Ministry of National Security, Brian Achampong, who took full responsibility for the deployment of the attacks. Now, if you look at the security architecture of our country, to some extent, the Minister of State responsible for national security works hand in hand with the Inspector General of Police. He is the superior of the Inspector General of Police. And so if he continues to stay in office, how is the Inspector General of Police going to be able to investigate such a person? These are some of the reasons which informed our decision to call for an independent probe. In any case, Evans, we expect that the Commission of Inquiry, which has now been named by the President, would be very impartial. I mean, some of the names mentioned, Professor Mensa Bonsu is a law professor at the law faculty. She's acquitted herself well in public life. Justice Emil Short, former commissioner, the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, has also served this country well. Patrick Achampong is a former Inspector General of Police. We expect that in accordance with their mandate, which is captured under Chapter 23 of the Constitution, the inquiry would be very impartial, and that at the end of the day, the government would fully implement their recommendations. I've listened to my senior, Honorable John Ndeburu, speak and all the reasons he's canvassed in his criticism of a commission of inquiry. Yes, those views are very objective indeed. I have a lot of respect for the Honorable John Ndeburu. We wouldn't want a repetition of what happened in the case of the Waku Commission. You remember that was also a commission of inquiry. At the end of the work of the Waku Commission, all the people the commission recommended to be prosecuted, I mean, not even one of them was convicted by our courts. That, for me, added to the protracted nature of the conflict in Dagbao. So a lot is expected of the commission of inquiry that has just been named by the president. I have no doubt whatsoever that the three individuals are very capable and competent, and that at the end of the day, we expect that justice is done so that the perpetrators of the violent acts and brutalities that were meted out to innocent Ghanaians are brought to book, and that when the appropriate recommendations are made, we should see some prosecutions which at the end of the day should result in convictions to serve as a lesson for like-minded individuals who intend to repeat the unfortunate incidents we saw at Ayawa.
So fundamentally,
in our country.
So fundamentally, the minority, you welcome the Commission of Inquiry?
Yes.
Okay. However,
we welcome the work of the Commission of Inquiry with a caution that we don't expect the outcome of the Commission's work to go the way the recommendations of similar commissions went in the past. A lot is expected of them. We would give them all the support to do their work.
And you know, the commission has a power of the High Court. They can be subpoenaing people and hearing testimony, etc. However, you already started cooperating with the police in their own investigations. And you read a statement yesterday from the IGP who said he's expanding scope. You'll be cooperating with both? Or working
Absolutely.
with you don't have a preference in terms of this matter, right?
No. We shall cooperate with both the Inspector General of Police as well as the Commission of Inquiry. We don't have a preference in the matter, except to say that a lot would be expected from the Commission of Inquiry, because I've already demonstrated that so far as the IGP's investigations are concerned, there are quite a number of bottlenecks, and one can hardly blame the Inspector General of Police, because if we're elsewhere, the minister whose actions have been called into question would have immediately stepped aside to pave the way for investigations to continue. Unfortunately, he elects to continue to be in office. The appointing authority has also not deemed it fit to ask him to leave the scene and allow for the investigations to be conducted. But if the same individual is subpoenaed or invited to appear before the Commission of Inquiry, and they didn't appoint him, I'm sure they would be able to do an impartial inquiry relative to his complicity in the violence that ensued at Ayawaso West Wuogon.
And Mr. Gaga will stay with us, because there's several other issues that are coming up from Parliament today on this same Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election violence. Still to come here on Newsnight.
So Ayawaso West Wuogon continues to dominate discussion as the presidency sets up Commission of Inquiry to investigate and proffer appropriate sanctions where necessary. We'll continue to get reactions, plus yours as well. And minority MPs to face Privileges Committee for contempt of the House for displaying bloody widow placard ahead of the swearing in of Lydia Seyram Al-Hassan as MP. But Tamale North MP Al-Hassan Suhini is meanwhile accusing the Speaker of unfairness after the Speaker walked him out of the chamber.
I wasn't actually shouting in his direction. I was telling everybody who could see that I am ready to pay the ultimate price for fairness and for objectivity.
Also in this edition, CODEO and Electoral Commission on collision course over the conduct of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election as the Observer Group shoots down the EC chairperson's claims of misrepresentation of the facts.
Contrary to the Electoral Commission's suggestion that CODEO did not provide an overall picture of the content of the poll, CODEO wishes to draw the attention of the EC to the paragraph in the CODEO statement most observers reported of a generally smooth voting exercise.
Also, Joy News investigation reviews how interference from government officials caused the Ayalalo bus services to grind to a halt.
The World Bank says the business case that emerged assessed 80 buses as the initial requirement. However, the government bought 245, more than 3 times the number.
We have details also in business.
We'll hear from an energy expert on the current tango between ECG new owners and the PURC.
And later in sports, the Black Satellites suffer defeat in their second group game at the ongoing African Youth Championship. Jimmy Cobbler's side must now win or draw their last game against Mali to book a place in the next stage of the competition.
And later we get to hear from the music man Kojo Entry, who says he leaves the public to judge on who is the greatest between him and Daddy Lumba.
He may have his own different target, and it's not up to me to judge that my songs are better than him. It is for the crowd to judge whose songs are better, or time will judge us.